For those of you that aren't aware, I'm Jo Faraday and Managing Director of Sheer Edge, and thank you so much for joining us for our panel chat today. And we're going to be talking all about confidence in return to live events in 2021. And before we do make a start, I just want to make everyone aware we are recording today's session. So if you don't want to be seen in this way, because we will be replaying it and putting it on our YouTube channel, please turn off your camera. So it's time to introduce our panellists, and I'm really excited today to say hi to Terry Heath, who's MD of Maverick. Hi, Terry.
Good afternoon. Hi, Jo. How you doing?
I'm good. How are you?
We're well. All good. Looking forward to the session.
Good. And Natasha Bai, who's founder of Strategy Doctor. Thanks for joining us today, Natasha.
No, I'm looking forward to it, as I'm looking forward to live events.
Absolutely, I think we all are, so that's great. Lisa Lerno-Dock, who's the Sales Director of MICE Iconic Luxury Hotels. Thanks for joining us today, Lisa.
Thank you, Jo. I look forward to it.
And Mark Lee, Principality Stadium. Really happy to have you join us today, Mark.
Pleasure to be here, Jo. Looking forward to it.
Great stuff. So thanks for joining us, everybody. We also have Lisa Tuig, who's running a session behind the scenes, and Leah Bova-Armstrong, who will be moderating. So please have all your questions, pop them in the chat. We want to hear from everybody today. It's not just about the questions I'm going to ask. We really want to know what your thoughts and feelings are, as well as the panelists. So don't be shy. So now the introductions are over, it will be a good idea to get down to the actual panel chat. I'm going to start with you, Mark, if that's okay.
Go ahead.
I know you recently released the long-awaited dates and fixture confirmations for the Autumn Nations and Six Nations 2022. So I'm really excited about it. I know lots and lots of the people are. How are you planning to operate the hospitality areas for those fixtures? And what assurances is your venue offering attendees for attending the events? Because I know you operate the hospitality and the meeting side of things, so it's good to get a handle on both, really.
Yeah, absolutely. Yeah, so firstly, we're just over the moon to be on sale for face-to-face hospitality indoor events. It's been a long time coming. We've been on sale for 2 weeks now, and the demand is insane. Which is really pleasing to see and be a part of. We are expecting and hopeful and aiming for full capacity in the autumn. So that would mean, full stadium bowl, 74,000 people, and with that comes sort of a full indoor hospitality setting, if you like. So our aim and our hope is that we've been in a position to do that. Obviously, that's caveated with whatever sort of government guidelines there are at the time and restrictions, etc., and of which we are scenario planning various different offerings. But we are planning at this stage for full capacity.
Gives me goosebumps thinking about it, to be honest.
I know it's going to be strange. It's going to be since the end of February 2020 that we've done anything sort of live within the stadium capacity. So it'll be quite nerve-wracking, actually, just kind of remembering what to do. But yeah,
you'll be fine.
We'll be all right. But confidence-wise, as I said, we've been on sale. Demand's been insane, but we are doing a guarantee whereby that if anything does happen, then obviously there'll be full refund, no questions asked. And we're offering that across the board on everything that we do, across especially this autumn. So yeah, 30th of October is going to be a day to look forward to.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think we will get into the other questions about flow tests, do you, don't you, all of those. We'll get into that a bit later on. But I mean, in terms of offering your assurances for meetings and events, are there any specific protocols that you've got in place at the moment that will eliminate any uncertainty? Because I know I ran a recent poll literally yesterday, and uncertainty is one of the highest things that event organisers are just unsure about. And I think anything venues can do to eliminate that uncertainty is only a good thing, isn't it?
It is, yeah. And I think the difficulty comes is that the venues are uncertain themselves. You know, we're uncertain as to what we can and can't do at this stage. You know, we obviously fall under a different sort of remit to, you know, venues in England and Scotland, whereby, you know, we haven't yet released our roadmap properly. I know Boris made an announcement, didn't he, you know, a day or two ago, which is obviously...
It's tricky, isn't it? If it doesn't, you know, it immediately affect you, it's harder, isn't it, really, to try?
Yeah, so we're seeing a lot of inquiries, especially over the last sort of, you know, 24, 48 hours. But we are obviously under a different remit, so we're not really aligned yet. Now we're hopeful that will be the case next week, but as it stands at the minute, the venues themselves, we're quite uncertain on what we can and can't do. I think what we're saying is that our communication is you know, is up there. You know, we're communicating what we do know. And obviously when we do get given the go ahead, there will obviously be, you know, there'll be things that we put in place that will obviously give delegates, give organisers, give suppliers, you know, give everyone that confidence that what we're doing is, you know, is safe, secure, and you know, is ultimately what the organiser wants. So
absolutely. No, that's great. Thanks, Mark. I know I've probably put you on the spot a little bit with that question, because it is difficult if you've not been given that guideline. But I think you're right. You know, as soon as you've got that, I know you'll be running with it, won't you? So that
absolutely. And like you say, you know, I think we're all the same. We just can't wait for live events to start again. There is no replacement for face-to-face meetings, conferences, and events. And you know, we just waiting. We've got everything ready. We just need to be given that go ahead of, you know, you're allowed X amount of people in this setting. So yeah, as soon as that comes, we'll be flying with it.
Absolutely, that's great. Well, I'm sure this isn't the last question that we'll be chatting about. So I'm going to go over to Natasha now. So Natasha, you're participating not only as someone who would have historically attended a live event, but you know, you've done lots of keynotes, you do lots of sessions at events. So I was really keen to sort of get your thoughts and feelings. So on top of running a successful business, Strategy Doctor, you do also, you know, run lots of brilliant workshops. I know we've been chatting about your improv comedy amongst lots of other things that you do. So what are your feelings about attending a live event this year?
I have to say, I am genuinely really excited. It's just the thought of being around, you know, attending something together with three-dimensional people with legs. You know, just, the benchmark is not set really high, you know. Zoom, platforms like Zoom, that have been brilliant for me, you know, over the last year, because as I say, I do everything from comedy to training, but also I like to attend events, and it's enabled me to connect with people from Sydney, you know, Tokyo, Croydon, you know, all great cities. But the fact is, there are things that you can't get from a virtual event that you can't get in a live event. And I think that the things I'm really excited about, and they can still be done sensibly and safely, is the energy, authenticity and courtesy that comes from a live event. So energy, you know, Mark's talking about, you know, a stadium there, you know, there's a massive difference in energy because it's infectious between, if you watch a game in your front room with only Doritos for company, your energy is going to be very different from the atmosphere you pick up from a big crowd. When you're a speaker, being able to walk the stage and bring energy to body movement is much different from a tiny screen like this. And, you know, I do comedy, and when everyone's on mute, because for sensible reasons, we don't want flushing toilets and dogs in the background, but when everyone's on mute, it's really hard to get that energy. You have to work very hard. So there's that. Then there's the authenticity. You know, when you're in a live event, you genuinely connect with other people. You know, here, if I want to try to establish eye contact, really, I'm not actually looking at you. I'm looking down this thing called a camera. I'm pretending to have eye contact. You know, it's not genuine. It's hard to get really authentic conversation when everyone's buffering speed's slightly different and you're a time second to low. And then the last thing I would say is with the courtesy. Let's face it, on virtual events, we all have very sloppy habits because we like to think we can multitask. So where, you know, someone can be putting their heart and soul into a talk or a magic show or anything, and people will be doing their shopping lists. People, I bet you right now, people are probably doing LinkedIn posts. They just might turn their camera off so they can shout at their husband to go and put a cup of tea on. You know, it's like that. And in a theatre, you wouldn't be calling out. You wouldn't be doing other stuff. you know. So I think you'll get that much more respect for each other as human beings as well. So I'm really looking forward to doing it, and I think we can still do it safely. You know, you can still get all those things, that energy, that authenticity by still social distancing if you need to, and everything else. So I think it's going to be very exciting.
Yeah, I'm with you, absolutely. And you know, what would we have done without, you know, these platforms and you know, the digital events that we have run, because it has enabled us to still keep that line of communication. But I'm with you, because I think the attention spans, you know, you constantly striving, you know, we've as a business, SheerEdge have helped clients run their digital events, but also the entertainment. And that's really tricky, because you've got to keep stepping it up a notch and seeing, you know, what else there is. Because, you know, once they've seen, you know, an illusionist, or, you know, heard, you know, a musical band, or they've done their cocktail making, they don't necessarily want to do it again. So it's trying to keep it even fresher. So I think there's something to be said about physical live events, and like you say, getting that feedback, that, you know, going to a game, watching, you know, a concert, all of those things. Or like I say, it gives me goosebumps.
Yeah, just not sitting. I say, if you sit for an hour showing your head and shoulders, looking at someone who's sitting for an hour, their head and shoulders, it's not the most energizing thing for us all.
No, I'm not doing happy dances though, Natasha, if that's what you're trying to get me to do.
Hey, there's plenty of time.
So I am now going to move on to Terry. Now, Terry, you are Managing Director of Maverick, and in 2019, you guys ran hundreds of training workshops throughout the UK and overseas. And in 2020, you really had to think quickly, as you always do, and transitioning, you know, that training online. But as an event organizer, what are your thoughts about running events in 2021? I know already the answer to this, but I want our audience to hear all about your journey so far.
Absolutely. Jo, as our absolutely professional service event finder, you know exactly where we're heading already. Yeah, for us, 2019, we held over 100 events across that year. A big part of what we do as a business is the training aspect. So obviously entering 2020 at the very beginning, and then suddenly in March having to stop everything, caused a lot of changes within our business. But thankfully we were already in the process of starting to leverage the digital arena and the digital platforms. So for us, it wasn't a big transition. It was just one that we had to accelerate a little bit quicker. However, there's a lot of things we've learned over the year about what you can and what you can't do in the digital spaces. And missing so much the live events. Absolutely. You can't replace, as has already been said, the eye contact, the rapport you have in the room, the live questions from the floor. You know, replace those by the questions that, you know, see some coming up in the chat on the side. The dynamic is different. So really looking forward to live events, and we're going to go as early as next month. So quite scary.
It's weird though, isn't it? This year's really is going fast, because you'd say sort of June and think, oh yeah, it's ages away. It's not, it's next month now. So so you haven't got long to wait, and that's the good news. So yeah.
No, we haven't got long to wait. And I think the timescales in it all as well have been quite key. If I look coming into this year, January, February, nobody really had a clue. What is the year going to look like? Will we ever get back to in person? Will life even be back to any sort of normality that we knew almost 18 months ago? And so being in a place now where we are responding quickly, thankfully we are a company that's quite used to that. We have that culture where we turn things around very fast. And so the decision to go in June and get venues booked up now really came on the back of some of the surveys, some of my own surveys that I put out on social media platforms, just to get a feel for what people had an appetite for. Yeah. Were people ready to jump into in-person events, or are people reluctant? And I found that in general, over 60% of people are just ready. They're now ready. I think we've all seen enough of the four walls of the bedroom, the dining room, the kitchen, wherever you put your home office, and we're ready to actually meet people again, and mix again.
And I think that's the thing for me, and that was one of the questions I was going to say to you is, how are you assessing how people are feeling? Because I think as an event organizer, it's really important from my perspective to understand what your audience is feeling, because some may not feel confident still, or some may be, like you say, absolutely raring to go. And without asking your audience how they're feeling, how are you going to assess it? You know, you can't just put your finger in the air and go, I think it's about, you know, you've got to do that assessment, and I know you guys do that anyway, so that's
it is. And I think with when live events site, it's going to have to cater for the different audience, well, not the different audience, but the different types of people that will come. There are some people who will come and they'll just want to rip off their masks and hug you and say hi. That's not quite going to happen. No. But then there's going to be those that are coming in, and you know, we've all seen them going into supermarkets and they've used the hand gel 3 times before they go through the entrance. Everything's so overcautious. We've got to be able to cater for all of those people coming in. So making sure that, I know we're looking right now, what do we need to put in place? What are the assurances that we can give people pre-booking so that they know when they come to the event, it is a safe place to come to, that all considerations are taken into account, and they can come and confidently sit down in a venue, in the trainings that we would do particularly, and get themselves involved in that, rather than thinking, oh my goodness, that person's getting a few inches too close, or we don't want that. We want people to feel comfortable. So it's going to take a little bit of thought and a little bit of creativity, and I'm sure we'll find lots of new ways of doing things. But yeah, live events, they're coming.
Yeah, they are indeed. Thank you, Terry. Right, Lisa, I'm going to come over to you now. So, as sales director of MICE for iconic luxury hotels, what have been your plans and feelings about relaunching live events this year? And I know that's such a big question, but I know you can handle it.
Well, well, with us, you know, because our properties are relatively smaller. I mean, we, you know, prior to the pandemic, it was more smaller meetings and a certain amount of kind of reward and incentive business. But prior to this, we saw a lot of the reward and incentive business. You probably, I know, you know this, all went either, you know, overseas. You know, a reward and incentive was abroad someplace, long haul, short haul. But I always thought our properties were, you know, very well suited for that, but nobody in the UK necessarily saw it as a reward to stay in the UK. But that's really changed. I mean, I'd say the majority of inquiries that we're getting now for groups, a lot of that are these small, high-level reward and incentive, because so many companies have done so well. You know, there's some terrible stories, but there's some real success stories. I mean, tech, internal pharma, but all they've had their sales forces, their workforces working from home. So they need something to engage them, to bring them together. So it's the perfect timing for that. But that comes on the back of kind of another trend that I think that we've been seeing. And that's a trend even prior to this for smaller, Natasha, like you said, more authentic, you know, kind of experiences. The days of, you know, I remember when I first got in this business a long time ago as a DMC, an incentive was like a replacement holiday for 600, you know, of your closest friends, and they would take you to some beach resort. But that has really evolved, and people were looking at smaller, more authentic. I think a lot of it is a generational thing too. Don't you think people want more authenticity? So we've been trying to marry the two. And Joe and Terry, what you've been saying about people being maybe a little bit nervous coming back as well. We've been trying to address that. And one of the ways is like tomorrow, even if someone was given a trip, you were given this 5-star luxury, all expense paid, and you knew there were going to be 30, 40 people there. I'll bet you out of that 30, 40 people, there would be a small percentage that would be nervous at this stage about being part of a larger group.
Yeah.
So one of the ways we've tried to address that is we've come up with an idea. I think some other properties have come up with something similar that we've been calling iconic experiences. And we're building that as a shared experience that can be delivered individually. It's not vouchers, because I think vouchers would be great, but they just hand them out and you wouldn't get that shared engagement. And I think that, as you all were saying earlier, that's what people are missing.
Yeah.
You know, they want that. It's marrying up the two. It's marrying up the authenticity the desire to engage with others, but also that feeling of safety. So what we've been trying to do is kind of promote it where, say, a company could launch for 10 people, for 200 people, this experience where they'd have a choice of, say, in our case, one of our 5 hotels. They would launch it in the same way with the big rah launch, you know, and then everyone could go to a different hotel at a different time. But when they went to that hotel, they'd have the same experience as everyone else, you know, and something very authentic, something tied in with the company. If the company was into wellness, it'd be some, not a spa treatment, but some real, if they were into adventure, it'd be a, you know, a rib blast and all. And then everyone would share their experience in some kind of platform back of house. So they were all doing the same thing. They could share it with each other, but they were going at different times.
Yeah.
This is what we're trying to promote as kind of a stopgap. And then the next step for that is those people experience that and they thought, oh, we were actually in a hotel and there were other people here. It was all okay. So the next time that company wants to bring a smaller group together, they'll feel more comfortable with it. And then progress the larger and larger events. So that's kind of our initial thoughts.
I think that's a really, really good idea to do. And like you say, it's good to have stopgap options because, and you know, I've been having this conversation regularly as an event professional, as a business owner, as a, you know, person that thrives on events. That side of me wants to book on as many as possible. But as a mother, wife, personal, you have to, you know, in terms of your booking requirements, there's now 2 sides that you have to consider, or in some cases some people have that, and that's a human nature thing. And who knew that would be something that event organisers might have to factor in. But you are booking from a personal perspective as well as a business perspective now, and some people are limited in certain ways. You know, there might be shielding, you know, there might be caring for someone, and that might still be the case. And even with the vaccines and things, you know, but with all the different strains and all of this that's going on, you know, how comfortable are people feeling? And I think that has to be taken into account as well when you're organising the event, is how people are feeling about it. But I think ultimately the confidence is growing, and you know, as the vaccines are getting rolled out and everybody's having their second doses and what have you, then that's all building up, isn't it, to a more positive picture.
Yeah, but like I said, I think our experience too is that we are seeing we're seeing a huge amount of inquiries. I mean, all our country houses are pretty well full to begin with. You know, everyone's kind of staying put. You know, I think London's going to be a little bit slower coming around, and we're getting a lot of inquiries, but they are all right now pretty much smaller, high level, but they want some kind of, you know, real experience. If they're going to go out and they're going to meet as a group, they really want to make it, you know, worth their while.
Like an intimate kind of environment rather than a big, like you say, big rah-rah do. They want it to be an intimate experience.
Well, I think they just feel is, you know, everyone is still about nervous. It's baby steps. But this whole thing, it is going to be baby steps back. We can't expect the whole world to return to absolute normal. I mean, it's not going to happen. But it generally, gradually, as people feel more comfortable, things will, you know, we'll look back in 2 years and think, whatever happened?
What was that? Yeah. And the phrase "you're on mute" will hopefully be abolished. Thank you, Lisa, for sharing that. Right, so I'm going to throw a real hot potato out there for the panellists now. So what are your thoughts about COVID passports and/or asking your attendees to complete a flow test before attending your events? So I know that there's been pilot events that have happened, and that's been the protocol. You know, they've done the flow tests and then they've attended, and there's been no masks, there's been no social distancing. So what are your thoughts? Will you be adapting the same thing, or are you waiting to see? That's to anyone, whoever's brave enough to answer it.
I'll jump in. So in Wales, obviously we're slightly different to the rest of the UK. So we have one of our first pilot events next week. So we'll obviously be taking learnings from that event, and obviously we would have to then basically go on what the outcomes were from that particular pilot in order to, you know, satisfy various demands within sort of Welsh Government, local authorities and sort of Visit Wales. My only comment would be probably in terms of sort of COVID passports, and this may be a controversial view, but I think we just need to be really, really careful, not only from the practicalities of sort of implementing, you know, such a scheme, but, you know, there's so much precedent that it could set. There's so many sort of risks to privacy, discrimination potentially, you know, all the things that are being sort of touted in Parliament at the minute against those who are particularly, you know, unable to be vaccinated. So I just think it's a really, really, it's probably something that would have to be decided by someone far higher than my pay grade. I've been, you know, the powers be in Westminster or the Senate. I don't think it's something the venues can necessarily, you know, we can give feedback, but I just think it needs to be very highly thought of. I think you know, the testing is quite natural now. You know, I think that's quite normal. But in terms of sort of the COVID passport, I think that we just need to be careful as an industry on what sort of precedent we set, and you know, how, so at the end of the day, we want everyone meeting face to face as quickly as possible. And whether this is the right thing, I'm not too sure.
Yeah, no, understandably. And I think that's the thing, isn't it? It's what is going to be the norm. And, you know, I'm not saying I necessarily agree with it at all. It's just what everybody's views are on it, because that, you know.
Yeah, and it's the balance, isn't it, of, you know, opening up the industry as soon as possible, safely, against the sort of the long lasting effects of the industry. And I think there's got to be a balance between the two. Yeah, that's my view.
Yeah, no, I absolutely. Thank you. Thanks for responding to that. And Natasha's got her hand up.
Yeah, I was just going to say, because I think that it comes down to, I'm going to say this because I'm a strategist, but it comes down to the intent. The intent is that we want to go back to live events, but we want to be able to keep going. So we don't want to do something stupid and then mean that you have live events for 2 months and you go right back into lockdown again. Because I think actually that's even more dangerous for the industry than actually if not opening up at all, because it's the commitment. So I think the intent is that, so it should be free for venues to be able to turn people away if they've got symptoms, to, you know, to be able to ask people if they've come in contact with someone who's got symptoms. And I think testing is a legitimate thing, because you're trying to stop the spread there and then. I think these kind of COVID certification things, or whatever we call them, it's a different thing, because this is not about whether on that day you're presenting or at risk. It's just saying, are you fitting a bucket or a label? And there may be lots of different reasons. Vaccine's going to take a while to get to the population. There will always be those, for whatever reason, who haven't had it. I think that gets into a difficult place, and as Mark said, for data protection and everything else, it's difficult, because that's about you as a person, not about the virus then.
Yeah, absolutely. And I think priority has to be about the virus and you know, what risk you opposed to, you know, other people that are going to be attending the event. That's my view as well. Absolutely. Anyone else's thoughts before I hand over to you?
Yeah, Joe. Obviously, as an event organizer, one of the areas that we're having to look at is, you know, giving people that confidence, and the whole topic around lateral flow testing. And the conclusion that we're currently settling on is that it's something that we have to recommend. We recommend that you do a lateral flow test. We can't enforce it. It's something you would have to do prior to coming to the event, or else you then got to, all the logistics of how do you test somebody and where they have to go and sit for half an hour while their test result comes through and then show you their little plastic thing with a marker on. That's practically not going to happen.
Yeah.
So, you know, having that is what we recommend. You know, we're looking for collectively the responsibility around people staying safe has to sit with the person attending the event, the venue, and the organizer. Some of the conversations that I see quite a lot is it the venue's responsibility, or is it the organizer's responsibility? Well, personally, I think it's both, because neither the venue wants people walking in and spreading the virus, neither does the organizer.
Yeah. So
you can't hand it off one way or the other. It has to be a combination of both. And so making sure, obviously, the venue's making sure that things like hand sanitizers are available, disposable masks, should somebody, because we've all done it, we turn up somewhere at the supermarket and hands are in your pockets going, oh, crumbs, my masks in my other jacket, or it's at home, or I've left it in the car. So making sure that those things are available But at the same time, you know, giving the people the confidence that, look, please do your lateral flow test, make sure you're not spreading any virus, you haven't picked it up anywhere, and we'll all stay safe.
I think that's the best option that you can hope for, to be honest, because like you say, it needs to be a joined up approach. I agree. Yeah. I think, you know, the onus have to be on the attendee, the organizer, and the venue. And as long as the attendee knows the organizer and the venue have done what their, you know, their part of the deal, then the attendee's part of the deal is to make sure that they're in a good clean bill of health and raring to go to enjoy the event. Absolutely.
Definitely.
Thanks, Terry. Anything else to add before I hand over? Right, well, the silence means that I'm done now with my questions. So I'm going to hand over to Leah, who I know there's been lots of questions. So see, they're pinging about.
We've got really good questions as well, and points of view of other people.
Right.
So we've got the first question from Lou Furby, and it says, for me, I'd like to understand who has the ultimate ownership of adhering to the ever-changing COVID rules and restrictions. Is it the venue? To keep our guests reassured, we'd like to understand this and share early to build confidence.
Who wants to answer that one? Go on, be brave.
Well, I was just going to say, ultimately, I mean, the venue, we can't be the police. I mean, you can set out all the, you know, ask people the questions, have your venue as safe as it can be, you know, in line with every government guideline. And that is really the most you can do at this point. You know, if someone wants to lie or somebody wants to, it's not the responsibility really of the venue, as long as the venue has covered, you know, all the requirements and asked all the questions, then, you know, it's not their responsibility past that.
Yeah, I agree with that. Yeah. I mean, I think she's left, but she had to leave, but she said that she would check up on the recordings. But yeah, I think I completely agree with you. The next question is from Daljit, and it says, what is the insurance position on this? Does the responsibility lie with the venue or event organizer? I think it would be more or less the same question as the one before, really. Anyone want to answer that, or do I go to the next question?
Yeah, slightly different. I just say, obviously, from I'm not close enough to this, but I think this is some of the things that need to be really clarified by the government. We've kind of shown that actually the government has decided that we as individuals aren't capable of making decisions, which is why we've had a lockdown calendar and things in place. And then it's clear that obviously the venues and the organisers have requirements of them. But I don't know where anyone can answer that is actually where it is clear when the ultimate buck stopped, if there was a problem where it says and what insurance companies would cover. Because I don't know whether you're double counting if the venue has to have certain insurance and the organizer. I don't know. I would be genuinely interested to know the answer to that, just from a legal point of view as well.
Yeah.
But wouldn't it be sort of, it would be a personal responsibility. Let's say, I don't know, I'll just take a mad stab being American. Let's say you had some kind of medical insurance policy that covered you as long as you didn't smoke. But somehow you had some kind of claim and then they could find out that you had smoked. Well, that would invalidate the whole, you know, insurance is invalidated at any point if someone breaches. So as long as the venue would carry out, you know, to the letter, then it would be the responsibility of the insured.
Yes, if you could show evidence that you asked the questions.
Yeah.
You asked the questions, you had the distancing measures or whatever you required in place,
Yeah.
you did that. And then if people didn't adhere to them, then it passes to them. But if you didn't ask the questions, then...
I think from my position as an event organizer, one of the things that I would hope to see in this next year really is almost a standardization of expectations when you go to an event. I know, having gone to different hotels, that they'll all have different ways of doing things, different venues do things, some are more relaxed than others, you know, and so my concern would be, and I'm already thinking of places we've been where they may be a little bit more relaxed about some of the guidelines than we would have hoped. which then puts people on edge when they come to your events, because they see foyers full of people that they have to push through to get through to a meeting room and things like that. That I would hope that there is some sort of standardized approach to this, that people accept it. And whenever people go, any hospitality venue, any venue that's holding meetings, there is a way of doing things that people just accept as the new norm. And that keeps everybody safe. That's my hope. I know I'm going to find a disparity between lots of places, but that's just the way it's going to go.
Right, so the next question is from Ross. What social distancing measures are venues putting in place post 17th of May? 1 metre or 2?
That's a good point.
So I think, again, I think this all comes down to sort of industry guidelines in terms of what is decided after these pilot events have been complete. I know in Wales currently we're 2 metre social distancing, and I know our First Minister said that he foregoes that's going to be the case for, until he says otherwise. So in terms of what is happening currently with the pilot events, I imagine that will be the outcome, is whether we are 1 metre, 1.5 metre, half a metre, 2 metres, whether, there's masks less exempt, whether there's a whole host of things I think that are yet to be decided. But obviously we need some clarity, both from a venue perspective and from an organiser perspective, as what we're doing. Really.
Yeah.
Very true.
At least we'll all be able to hug again.
Yeah.
Yeah.
Actually hug.
Right. So Candice says, insurance, as far as I've heard, is based on business insurance as an organiser responsibility, so should be included within your liability. This is also be based on the measures are at the time. So, for example, like COVID secure certification, which will include vaccinations, LFT, and immunity. But interested to hear what the panelists' thoughts are.
Ooh, it's an interesting one.
Yeah.
The liability resting on, this is something that we've already discussed internally. How are we covered? You've got to think of the extremes. What if something does go wrong? What if somebody enters the venue and comes to your training carrying the virus, infects somebody else, and that ultimately ended in somebody's death? How could you handle that? How could you prevent that happening? If it did happen, what are your implications? I don't think there's any straightforward answers at the moment on that.
No.
I think it's what Lisa was saying as well. If you get direction, and we have to rely for clarity from the government, as attendees as well as the organisers, in terms of what is expected, that the kind of protections in place. And if you follow that, and that's where it's got confusing with devolved nations, that Wales is doing something different to England to Scotland. That's a bit confusing. But if you follow the directions and they're clear enough, because the problem has been some of the rules are a bit inconsistent. I mean, even from Monday, it's confusing that you can go to an indoor exercise class, so I can go to a Zumba class, but if I go to a wedding, I'm not allowed to dance. So you've got these just weird discrepancies in rules that you just have to somehow navigate.
Yeah.
So next question is from Mike. What are thoughts on testing? Is this the responsibility of the organiser, the venue, local authority, or evidence provided by the individual? I think Terry mentioned something. Yeah.
I think what we've already said, really,
Yeah.
you can do, as long as we put in place, that you must have a negative lateral flow test in place, and the organizer again pushes the same notes. If the attendee doesn't do it, whatever way, manipulates the result or whatever, ultimately it's on the attendee. But like you say, it's all about that risk assessment, isn't it? That you need to do before open, and just having those things in place, really.
But no, I was just going to say, a lot of it, I think eventually it'll be down to the technology, because they're talking about having technology at airports and all that will be so advanced that it'll literally be like a 1 minute, 30-second test. And you think of when you're traveling, I mean, you have to stand in the queue and have your bag checked, before you get on a plane, and that's a safety issue, and no one thinks twice about that. So it might eventually come something like that, where literally there's this 30-second test, you're tested, and it's just a safety issue for the, you know, the rest, the same on the flight, the rest of the passengers, the rest of the people of, you know, wherever you're attending.
I can already see myself standing at the entrance of the venue with my little temperature gun.
Yeah. Well, they might have something like that, like they're saying
It's
the
very
equivalent
true.
of the temperature gun that'll be able to test actually for, you know, it's not, they say, not beyond the realm of reason.
Yeah, I do feel that it's one of those areas that we have to get used to. It's a personal responsibility for a collective good. From a personal standpoint, going to an event to do a lateral law test would give me the confidence, one, that I'm not carrying something in that might have an effect upon many other people.
Yeah.
But I know that that's not going to be the mindset of everybody. But if we can get that mindset to the majority of people that just says, look, stay safe personally, because it keeps the majority safe. And if enough people are doing that, then, you know, hopefully everybody stays safe, virus doesn't have a resurgence, and we eventually get to a time of life when we've consigned it to the past and we've moved on.
I think we're all looking forward to that day, aren't we? I think so.
Yeah.
Very much.
Right, so we've finished with all the questions, but I can see that Candice has got her hand up.
Hi, Joe.
Hi.
Hi, yeah, so I've just been listening in the background and just been furiously typing away. Interestingly, I attended a panel discussion last week with Martin Fullard, who attended the ACC Liverpool business event. And there was a big discussion around the exact topic we're talking about now, and the responsibility, the liability, the lateral flow testing. And one thing that Martin Fullard had said is we have to be careful not to confuse the COVID passport with the COVID certification, because they are two completely different things. The COVID certification is something that the government would like to implement on a temporary basis, which will include LFT, vaccination and immunity, and it will be up to the individual attending the event to make sure that that information is obviously put through, or that we ask that question, and then based on the liability to make sure that we've actually got that information in hand should anything happen at the event. So that's kind of what we're planning for. We're actually got our first event at the end of June. So obviously quite keen on making sure that all of these kind of measures are in place. So that's kind of how we're working it. And then the other question I asked was probably the same as you, Terry, is that, you know, how confident or how are people going to feel about saying, well, actually, I don't want to do an LFT test because I can't be bothered. But I think what the panel had said, well, actually, if your event is relevant and there's information they want to find out about, the content is important, most people will make that effort to say, right, well, okay, I'll do a quick test, it takes half an hour, as long as it's negative, I'll do another one after. Most people will feel comfortable doing that if it means they can attend that event safely amongst other people. So that's, again, so that's kind of what we're working towards. And I like you say, I think it is just down to, the individual to make sure that the information they are passing on is correct. I mean, I skydive, and every time I skydive, I have to complete a questionnaire every time I get to the drop down to say, have I got a cough? Have I had symptoms? Have I got a temperature? Have I been near anybody? And then have to sign a disclaimer to say, actually, all of the above is true if it's false, and that's up to me legally to make sure if anything happens. So that's kind of the basis that I'm working towards for our event in June. And I think what we're trying to do is using that end of June event as a case study and a kind of for us to say to the rest of our audience, we've done our first event. It was a smaller kind of, I mean, I think we're looking at 50, 60, but this is what happened. This is how comfortable people felt. These were the measures we put in place, and then using that for all of our other events as we kind of move towards the year. So I think for us as an event organizer, I think we have to be conscious that we have to start building that confidence, and everything that we put in place forms part of that whole entire, that kind of whole picture and that whole narrative. So just wanted to put it out there.
No, I think it's really valuable for you to share that with us, Candice. So thank you so much, and wishing you every success for your event. It's exciting.
I am. I'm probably getting more excited every day, but then more nervous about the level of risk and everything else that we have to start looking at that's around it. But yeah.
We'll have to do it though, don't we? Hey, we just push past it, and you know, I think that's like you say, your first event will become your test bed event, your pilot event that you can then roll out and use, you know, for future. And I think it's great for other organisers to know about it as well, so that they can pick up any, you know, any pointers that you might be able to share with them. I think that would be really valuable. So yeah, brilliant.
That's really helpful, because that's it, as an audience member, because I'm about to just buy some tickets for something coming June. I just want whoever's organising it just to be really clear what's expected of me. And no, you know, I'm not a big anarchist. I'll go along with what they tell me I've got to do. So, you know, and I think I'm not wild out of kilter. So if I book a ticket for a theatre or a show or something else, if someone just says to me, okay, what's expected of you? You're expected to wear a mask, you're expected to distance, you're expected to have a test, then you just go there. But it is just that clarity and consistency. And I will find it, as an audience member, really confusing if I'm going to one event on the Friday and I'm not supposed to do these things, and another one says that I do. That's where it will fall apart. So I think it is that, just to say Terry's point, clarity and consistency, and then we will go on with it. We'll adjust.
Absolutely. Any other questions from the floor before we send you on your merry way? Anything from anyone else? No, I think we've taught their ears off, everyone. So all that's left to say is thank you so much for joining us. I'd like to say a huge thank you to all the panelists for sharing all your thoughts and experiences and guidance with us. I've found it really valuable hearing your points of view. And a big thank you to Lisa and Leah for doing the great moderation and the production in the background. But most of all, thanks to everyone that has attended the session today. I know it's a lunchtime one, so I do appreciate everyone's time. Hope you enjoyed it, and we will be sending the replay out once we're done. So thanks very much.
Thank you.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Thank you. Thanks, Amelia.
Bye.
Bye.
Bye.